Palki first. Palki, we understand that you are now in Tel Aviv. You've been there on the ground in Jerusalem as well as Tel Aviv. What's the latest?
The latest is that I have a very special guest with me, Archit, tonight from Tel Aviv, Anat Bernstein. She's the head of the India-Israel Chamber of Commerce. Anat, good evening. Thank you for speaking with us and welcome to Wion.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for coming.
So we're looking forward to the Indian Prime Minister's visit and a lot of high-profile visits that we've seen from India to Israel. How is it shaping up in the area of trade relations between the two countries? What are you looking forward to?
We're actually, the trade relations now is about 5 billion bilateral trade. We believe that the potential is triple this amount. So it will not happen within a day, but I think that Modi's visit and the big interest from Israel in India will just grow. And with the interest of India in Israel as well, I think that we can reach this potential within 5 years.
I was speaking to some Indian students in Jerusalem earlier today, and they said that they're really looking forward to meeting the Indian Prime Minister, not just them, but some of their Israeli classmates, and that's the sentiment that you've also picked up.
I mean, just only today I got 10 phone calls. Can I get a photo op with Prime Minister Modi? And I said, let me try. He became really a star here, and everybody look forward to his visit. And it's going to be a historical visit. It's the first time that an Indian Prime Minister comes to Israel, and that's really history in the make.
Right, and the bedrock of this relationship has been the strategic ties, the defense deals, but now it's expanding. And how? From agriculture to IT to trade to education and tourism, the bilateral engagement is going into many spheres. How is trade shaping up? Have you seen a difference in the past 3 years that Modi has been in power in India?
Definitely, in a sense that I'm in India for 20 years now. So I have something to compare to. And the interest from Israeli companies is growing, from the largest companies that everybody understands that he needs to be in India. India is not just an episode. It's a long-term planning. And I think that 50% at least of the Israeli companies have now an India plan for them. And not just big companies, also startups that usually looked to US and Europe now are looking to India, and they shape their business to fit the Indian needs. And that's a big change that I see in the past 2-3 years, because India gives a promise to people.
Right. One of the slogans, if I may, of this government and this prime minister when he came to power was more governance, less government. Do you see a clear ease of doing business in India now, or do you still want things to change further?
Of course, I want things to change further, but I do see a change. And I'll give you just an example. Invest India was here last week, and we brought to them one case that we need their help. The kind of help and availability of Invest India makes a difference. And just a simple thing to show that India wants their investment, India wants relations, and we Israelis are very happy about it.
Right, and Make in India will also come up in the conversations that the Indian Prime Minister has when he visits here. How can Israel contribute? What is Israel looking at?
Israel is a small country. We are only 8 million people. Imagine we are 8 million. It's like half of Bombay or Delhi, right? And we are export-oriented. So we don't have a choice but to be in India, and to be in India is to make in India. It is a challenge, okay? In a sense that when you do a make in India, you do technology transfer, you have to give your IP. IP is what we have. Our brains is what we have. We have very small natural resources. So we will have to be very careful in the way that we give the IP, and India must help us to protect our IP when we get into those joint efforts.
Right. You've known the Indian Prime Minister for a long time. You were one of those people who received him when he came here in 2006. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. In 2006, there was a WATEC agriculture exhibition in Israel. At that time, of course, he was the chief minister. He came along with Minister Pawar, at that time agriculture minister. He came with chief minister of Rajasthan. All of them came to this big exhibition. And we took him to see agriculture in the desert. And at that time, he wasn't the prime minister, so he was very accessible. And we spent some time together during his visit. And then we had a very nice exchange of letters. And since this visit in 2006, many Israeli companies came to Gujarat. So Modi is attraction for Israeli companies. And now that he is seeing all of India, he is attracting more Israeli companies just because of him. So we are very proud of being a friend of Modi and being a friend of India in that sense.
And his election was something that many in Israel also tracked. This entire team, in fact, Sushma Swaraj headed a parliamentary group on Israel, and she visited earlier this year.
Sushma Swaraj, when she was in the parliament, she came to dinner at my place. Many years back now, when she came as the foreign minister, I reminded her of our dinner together. So again, another person that came to Israel before being in power, and now when she is in power, it's very encouraging, and she is definitely a driving force to the growing relations as well.
Right. On a larger sort of dimension, what is Israel looking at from the Indian Prime Minister's visit and the so-called opening up and coming out from under the carpet of this relationship internationally?
We say that we want our love to come in public. And Israel and India is definitely a true love story. And we have so much in common, and we have so much to do together. You have the economy, you have the people, we have the technology, they have the entrepreneurship, you have access to Arab countries we still don't have. So you have a lot to give us, and we hope that we have to give you. So we hope that this trip will state a mark that India and Israel are friends. That's a start. Then it will give a lot of encouragement for Israeli investors to go to India. And with the awareness to the India story, to the new India, to the modern India that this trip will give, I'm sure that many Israeli investors will want to go to India.
Yes, we've spoken about all the good positives. What are the challenges going forward?
The challenges, I mentioned the IP protection, which is crucial for us, but also there is a business culture gap. And people are not aware of the business culture, but from my experience, this is a blocking stone in making things happen. So Indians have to learn the Israeli psychic, and so is Israelis. So what we're doing in my chamber is we're educating the Israelis to understand the Indian method, the India subtext. When an India says yes, what does it mean? Sometimes it's no, but Indians will not say no, and vice versa. Israelis are very direct. They're sometimes very pushy. Indian business people don't like it. And sometimes business will finish just because of some rudeness of Israelis, which is not rudeness. That's the culture of being very direct, going straight to the point, saying the price up front and not going in circles. So there is a gap here. The Indians should learn the Israeli way. The Israeli will learn the Indian way, and we'll find some common grounds. Yep.
Do you believe the people-to-people contact is also growing over the past few years?
It is amazing. First, you see a lot of students, as you mentioned, studying here. So the student exchange, the academia exchange, MBA in Tel Aviv is with Indian students. In the Technion, you have Indian students. In the Weizmann Institute, you have postdocs and PhD students. So this is one. We have, my office here is in the Diamond Exchange. So in the Diamond Exchange, we have a lot of Indians around. In this very building, TCS has an office. State Bank of India is just across the street. So there is a growing interest from India in Israel. Infosys opened here an office, and Tech Mahindra and many other companies are looking into Israel. So it's in the business, it's in the academia, it's in the culture. Gradually, people are watching more Indian movies. It's not there yet, okay? It's difficult to watch Bollywood movies in here, but still, the dramas are interesting for Israel. So in every aspect, you see interest in India. And it's not just Raj Kapoor for Israelis anymore. Yeah. It's more than that.
Yes, and you've picked up Hindi as well. As we wrap this chat, I want you to say something in Hindi to people of India who are watching.
Mera Hindi nahi acha hai. Dhanyavad.
All right. Thanks very much, Anat Bernstein. So this is the sentiment overwhelmingly in Israel as not just the people of Indian origin, 80,000 of them in this country, this very small country, Archit, but a lot of Israelis also looking forward to the visit of the Indian Prime Minister. It's back to you.
All right, certainly, Palki, tell her that her Hindi is actually better than my Hindi, so she should have nothing to be ashamed of. But really quickly, before I let you go, Palki, I know you've been there on the ground for a few days, shuttling between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, less than a month now to go before Modi's visit there. What are some of the preparations that you're seeing, and is there a lot of press about the Indian Prime Minister's visit? We know Benjamin Netanyahu tweeted last month, and they've exchanged a lot of pleasantries on Twitter. What's the mood like there with the relationship between the two countries?
Well, those posts on Twitter are also an indication of the coming out, as we were talking about, that India is not trying to hide from the world, that it shares a relationship with Israel, both strategically, culturally, and in business terms. If you talk about the local press, I was speaking to some local journalists earlier today, and they said for them, the thrust of the highlight, rather, of this visit is the fact that the Indian Prime Minister will be coming to Israel and not visiting Palestine. And that, in a sense, is a leap, is a huge step forward, that this de-hyphenation, and Israel sees this as a vote of confidence from India and a very, very significant gesture.
There's also, a lot of relationship building between both the leaders, Netanyahu and Modi. In fact, they met back in 2014 in New York City. We also understand, the defense cooperation, the military ties, and, lots of things to discuss. Even the fact that there are about 40,000 Israelis who visit India. So certainly the relationship between the two countries are strong. Any idea on perhaps the agenda? Is this just more of a, Modi is visiting a lot of world leaders. He was in Europe. He'll be visiting Trump soon. Is just more of a diplomatic response and just, building allies, especially both India and Israel certainly wanting to fight terror.
That is one area where the interests converge. This attempt to fight terror, strategic interests have been in place. Remember, what's important to note, Archit, is that even when the two countries did not have diplomatic ties until 1992, there was some sort of cooperation. Israel came forward to help India in the wars in the 60s and 70s. The Israelis were some of the first people to have landed in India when the Kargil conflict broke out and offered help. And that is something that the government of India, the people in the defense and foreign policy circles really appreciate and acknowledge that Israel has stood by India when the international community did not always do the same. Having said that, there have been a lot of high-profile visits. Last year, President Pranab Mukherjee came. This year, Sushma Swaraj came to mark 25 years of diplomatic ties between the two countries. And as we've been saying ad nauseum, the Prime Minister's visit will be the first by an Indian Prime Minister to Israel. So a lot going on in terms of bilateral engagements. They've met twice, as you said, along the sidelines of the United Nations Security Council in 2014 and later. Narendra Modi, as Anat also pointed out, is seen as a friend of India, as someone who opened the doors to Israeli investors, to Israeli technology in Gujarat as chief minister, and that has been going strong, and his coming to office at the center was welcomed by people in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem.